Now we're going to practice meditation on the thinking process itself. Take a moment to let your body settle into a comfortable position and relax your whole body and enjoy the pleasant sensations of settledness and delight that comes from that repose. Now, bring your awareness to your thinking process, ignoring the body sensations, ignoring the sights and sounds around you. Focus exclusively on the flow of thought. At any given moment, your mind may be perfectly still without thought, or thought may be present. There are only those two possibilities. If your mind is perfectly still, good. Focus on that stillness. Merge with it. Hear it tangibly, as when you go from a noisy street to a quiet room, the absence of sound is a palpable presence of peace. Hear that peacefulness moment by moment and merge with it, become it, be peace. On the other hand, if your mind is not perfectly still, that's okay too. But be aware. The thinking can take place in 3 different ways. Some of the thoughts may involve internal images. You see scenes, faces, situations, spatial relationships on a kind of internal screen of the mind. Some of the thinking takes the form of internal talking. You hear words, phrases, sentences, perhaps your own voice, perhaps other people's voices, perhaps a monologue, perhaps a dialogue. And you hear this talking on a kind of internal loudspeaker. A third mode of thinking is more subtle. You can't clearly say it involves images or talking, and yet you know that your mind is not peaceful. that something is moving someplace. There's activity, perhaps deep down, a background hum, a subterranean flow, a buzzing. And you may not be sure exactly what the content of that thought is, but you know something is happening someplace. For lack of a better term, we'll refer to that kind of thinking as subtle processing, or subtle for short. It may or may not be present. Continuing to enjoy the relaxation of the body and continuing to let go of your involvement with everything but the thinking process. When you're pulled towards internal images, say to yourself, image, and observe with detachment. The images may last, or they may immediately pass away. Either is fine. Your job is to just be aware. Likewise, when you're pulled towards internal talking, say to yourself, talking, and listen to the talking. It may pass away, or it may last. And if a new sentence arises, once again say talking, and observe. Likewise, if there's no talking or imaging, but you become aware of movement someplace in the thinking mind, say to yourself, subtle, and observe the subtle processing. Focus your awareness in that direction. And see if it speeds up or slows down. So at any given moment, with respect to your thinking process, there can only be 4 possibilities. Peace, talking, imaging, or subtle processing, or some combination, perhaps talking and imaging at the same time. If it's a combination, you can say talking and imaging, etc. And keep track of what mode of thought is arising moment by moment. And try as much as possible not to be involved in the meanings of the thoughts. Of course, that's very challenging. Try to just look through the images, not at them. Try to listen to the talking as sound rather than meaningful speech, like the sound of birds. Sometimes it's difficult to distinguish the subtle mental processing from subtle body sensations associated with the thinking process. For our purposes, it's not necessary to make that distinction. Include any subtle activity that seems to be associated with the thinking process. into your object of meditation. And yield to its qualities of movement. Continue moment by moment to be clear about the mode in which thought is arising, and to the best of your ability to also be detached and just become fascinated with how the mind moves and less involved in what the mind means. As you do this, strong body sensations may arise from time to time. Just ignore them to the best of your ability and observe how they cause thoughts to arise in reaction. And recycle those thoughts in terms of their talking, imaging, etc., to be the object of your meditation. Of course, working with the thinking process is very challenging. Often, you'll be aware of the talking and imaging only after it has taken place. It may seem like much of the time you're lagging behind, and that's okay, because you're making a start. In day-to-day life, there is no awareness whatsoever with respect to the thinking process. So even if you find that your noting of the thoughts is well after the fact, you're still relatively much more mindful than you would be otherwise. And just accept that fact. Let go of that for just a moment. Bring your awareness to the actual sounds around you. Whatever sound may be present, loud or soft, try to hear all the sounds around you at the same time. On the right side, on the left side, and if possible even in front, behind, above, below. Try to let your awareness cover the entire volume of actual external sound and noise that is present around you. And if in a certain direction you hear no sound, then try to hear the silence in that direction. And listen to the sounds around you without regard to what is causing them, without an involvement in what they mean, but just hearing it, impacting at the ears as a kind of energy. Now, let go of that. Bring your awareness to your visual field and just slightly open your eyes. But try not to look at any objects. Just let the light come in, fill your visual field, and look through things, not at them. And gradually open your eyes and see if you can have a little less involvement with the objects of vision. Try to focus at infinity. And as objects of vision call your attention, try to somewhat ignore that and focus more out into infinity and also around the periphery of your visual field, so that you're just aware of a homogeneous quality of brightness filling the volume of space around you, and a little less involved in the forms. It's challenging, just give it a try. Continue to do that and gradually close your eyes. And continue to just look through the visual field with detachment. And also focus on the sounds around you, hearing on all sides with detachment. Once again, focus on the thinking process. Drop your involvement with physical sights and sounds, but preserve that momentum of matter-of-factness so that when thought images come up, you can look through them. And when internal talking sounds come up, you can listen to them just as sound without a regard to meaning. So the same way that you practiced being matter-of-fact and detached from actual physical sights and sounds, now carry that over and see if you can relate in the same way to the internal sights and sounds of the thinking process. And if you find that the labeling, talking, image, subtle, if you find that labeling gets in the way, then drop it. And just be aware, at any given moment, is the thinking taking the form of talking, imaging, subtle processing, or some combination. And if there are moments of peacefulness, be consciously aware of that and abide in it until something arises. And if there's not much talking or imaging, see if there might not be fairly continuous, subtle movement in the mind. And if so, focus in on that and watch how it speeds up and slows down, how it spreads and shrinks. And when the mind wants to speed up, let it speed up. When it wants to slow down, let it slow down. Become fascinated with the rhythms Take refuge in the rhythms of thought rather than the content, the meaning of the thought. In other words, try, challenging though it is, to relate to the thinking process in terms of its waves and energies. As you do this, if any significant discomfort arises within your body, feel free to move, but very slowly, very silently, and keeping the continuity of your focus. And if you find that you're getting distracted, be sure to make the labels clear. At any given moment, if there's talking or imaging or subtle processing, say to yourself, talking, imaging, subtle. And if you're really having difficulty focusing, say the words out loud. On the other hand, if your focus is very clear, drop the words. And just have direct awareness. Now be aware. Associated with the thinking process may be subtle body sensations in your head and face area. Particularly, pay attention to the sensations around your eyes, at your ears, and also the sensations in your tongue and throat. Focus in those regions. And you may notice that when you have imaging thoughts, it causes some sensation, physical sensation around your eyes, perhaps a subtle tension. Likewise, when there is internal talking, you may actually feel something on the ears or feel something in the throat and tongue. There may not be such physical impact, but observe for a moment. Slightly drop your jaw and feel the relaxation there, and let that relaxation spread into your throat, tongue, ears, and around your eyes. And try to keep those areas very relaxed. And continue to pay attention. That relaxation may have some impact on the thinking process, or it might not. But try to maintain it. And keep detaching from the thought process. Look through the images. Listen to the talking as simply sound. And watch the continuous background processing as just an energy wave that increases and decreases. And from time to time, relax. Drop the jaw, let the relaxation spread through your face and head, going to the tongue, the throat, the ears, and the eyes. And whenever there's peace, moment by moment, become that peace. As you do this, it may happen that the talking and imaging diminishes a bit, and it may happen that the talking and imaging diminishes a bit, or completely goes away, and there's mostly either peace or perhaps a sense of continuous buzzing, subtle processing, the background hum of thought. If you are aware of continuous movement deep in the mind, try not to be concerned with its meaning, but be fascinated with its motion. Be aware if that background processing speeds up or slows down. And treat it as a kind of energy field. And let the movements of that energy field massage you and take you into deeper and deeper states. And if images arise, look through them, not at them. And when they pass, continue to stay at the blank screen of the mind and be aware of the blankness, the absence of the image, until another image appears. Try to stay at that blank screen without being pulled elsewhere. And be aware of the peacefulness of the blank screen of the mind. And because you're abiding there, it will be easy to catch the images as they arise. And just let them pass through without involvement. Likewise, when you're pulled to internal talking, the sound of your own voice within, listen. And when the talking stops, stay at the place of the internal loudspeaker and hear the silence. And enjoy that silence and wait there for the next speech sounds to arise. And you can catch them perhaps at the very beginning and just let them pass through. And when you're pulled to subtle processing, stay in the flow of that and watch it expand and contract, speed up and slow down, as a kind of massaging energy.